Hi everybody. I've gotten a lot of questions about the journal exercise, and I want to offer a few clarifications because as expected, I'm getting kind of some of the same questions. So let's see here. I'm going to try this here and see if that works well. So the first thing I want to say is read the instructions. I know it sounds, just this simple thing, but I notice that a lot of students don't, or they read them in a rush, because every single question that I've gotten about the journals are already answered in the instructions. Okay, I know there's a lot of information there, but it's worth downloading the document, highlighting things. It's once you have it as a Word document in your own system on your own device, you can do what you want with it. Okay, remove the things that are superfluous and just change the font, highlight things. Okay, so just a reminder, you can get the document here under Assignments and Dropbox. Okay, so that's under Leia, so there's a section called Assignments and Dropbox, and the document is right here, okay, under Weekly Journal Entries. So, if I look at the document here with the instructions in it, again, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to go over it all in detail, but I invite you to read this carefully. One thing that I do want, I'll call your attention to a couple of things here. You're going to use this document all semester. So you're going to download it that first time, and you're going to submit that first journal this week, and I will respond. And then you're going to use that same document with your original entry and my response, and then add the second week's journal entry above the first one. I'll respond to that. And so you're at the end of the semester, you'll have this one Word document with a history of your journals, and that's something that for writing your final paper, you'll be able to kind of look at and reflect on, your own intellectual growth or whatever other kind of growth with regards to this material, because that's going to be a part of the final paper, is kind of looking at how you've changed in your thinking. So, again, we're doing this to take into account of how, the indigenous worldview or worldviews about learning, which are holistic and take into account of different aspects of learning. So here are the practical instructions here. So again, save the document somewhere safe, write your response. You'll see where to do that below with the date. Upload it back to Assignments in Dropbox for the appropriate week. You'll get it back in the same place, and use the same one for your more recent ones. Okay, I guess I have to turn that off to be able to scroll. There we go. Okay, and once you get used to the system, you'll be able to get rid of this box here. So this document, we'll be able to skip a lot of this stuff here. Now, one other question that people have had is, they panic, they saw all these questions and think they have to answer them all. No, you wouldn't be able to do that in 50 to 100 words, okay? So, look, please respond to the question of your choice. You don't need to answer all of them. Just pick one, okay? It's all there. So, and also keep in mind that these are just general leads, right? You can look at them and see where you're at that week, right? And it doesn't have to be exactly this. It's just these are all leads to get you started in your thinking. You might kind of deviate from these specific questions, and that's okay, all right? It's meant to kind of see where you're at every week. So, and here to reflect those kind of four planes, you have like a kind of more intellectual type question. And I think a lot of students are going to start there, because I know most of you are not used to kind of indigenous education and indigenous ways of learning, if you're non-indigenous, and even if you are indigenous, if you've always gone to school in the Western system with non-indigenous teachers, to a certain extent you might have embodied this way of learning that is purely intellectual, and it's hard to kind of think about learning as something that can be emotional and physical and spiritual. So if your comfort zone is to start with this intellectual type of thing, well, okay, I learned this is different from what I thought I knew before, so I have more knowledge now, and this is where my thinking is at. You can start there for the first couple of weeks, and when you're more comfortable, then you can start to ease into thinking about the emotional aspect or all these other things here. And you can blend them. It's not, I put these like this to help people get started, but it doesn't have to, you're not stuck in those categories. All right, they're going to cross over eventually, because you're going to be thinking about your thinking, and that's going to veer into thinking about your role in all of this, or your emotional reactions to all of this. And in future weeks, sometimes, like if I respond to one of your journal entries and you want to bounce off one of my comments, you can do that too. All right? So again, you're not answering all these questions. You're picking one to start with just to get you started. And then you'll see where it goes. Okay? So, so this is, you're going to put your name here, the date, and then your entry, and then every week you're going to put the newer one on top of the others so that it's easier to find. And if you don't need all of this stuff at the top, you can always delete it. Now, I created a sample journal entry. I removed the top instructions. I just kept this because I'm new in this class. It's my first, it's the first couple of weeks. I'm still getting used to this, so I want this at the top to help me think. So I put my name there, I put the date, and, I said 50 to 100 words, right? Some people write more, and that's okay. I put that kind of as a general thing, but if you go over 100, try not to write a full, long page, or a novel, because I won't have time to read them all. But if you go to 200-300 words, that's okay. So here I started, I'm a student who has gone through the Western educational system, and it's very hard, again, for me to think of learning in terms of something where I get to explore my emotional reactions to things, or think about my own position towards this, right? So I'm going to start with the intellectual thing. So I'm like, okay, this is something that struck me in this week's learning activities. I was on the Concordia page, and in the rationale section for the territorial acknowledgement, I saw this sentence here. We kept the word unceded since there are no, they have a typo on their site. Okay, no agreements or treaties that have transferred title from any indigenous nation to settler ownership or control. The land was occupied without permission. Growing up around here, non-indigenous people don't usually learn this part of history. Our schooling leaves the impression that indigenous people just disappeared. So see, so far we're still kind of, it's this intellectual, just purely brain stuff, knowledge here, right? Non-indigenous students never learn how lands were actually stolen and how indigenous people were moved out of the way. I'm simplifying because it's a journal entry, okay? It's much more complex than this. But this new perspective opened my eyes, because now I've learned that indigenous nations, such as the Ganyankahaga, don't worry if you can't pronounce it yet, and you can copy-paste from the original document if you don't know where all these accents are, still feel a strong connection to this land that they have been on for generations and that their ancestors took care of. And then, here is when sometimes you might veer into kind of some more emotional stuff without even realizing it, and it doesn't have to be big, intense, woo stuff. This is fairly, innocuous here. It's not fun to think about because it means that as a non-indigenous person, I benefit from something that was stolen. That's no fun. It's a little bit like someone finding out that a car their parents gave them was actually stolen from someone else. It's unfair. So I want to think about this some more and figure out what are some things that I can do about it. So here, I'm actually covering the 4 planes here. There's the intellectual knowledge, like, wow, I didn't know this. I wasn't taught this in school. And then when I think about it, wow, this is not fun to think about. Right? This is this emotional reaction to the unfairness of it, but I'm also realizing I've gotten some material benefits from there. That touches on the physical aspect of, because it's a physical thing to have access to the things you need to survive. And I have access to that because I'm on lands that were stolen. Okay? I want to think about this some more and figure out what are some things that I can do about it. We can say that this touches on the spiritual dimension because when we think about our own role in our societies and, what we can contribute to our societies, that can be seen as a spiritual thing. So you see, it started out intellectual, but then I wound up touching on these other things. So when you freestyle, that's the goal of like writing freestyle like this without these kind of academic structures. We're not caring so much about spelling and grammar here. You just write, and just kind of let it come out. If writing is difficult for you and you want to do your journal, you want to record your journal entries verbally, we can talk about that. Okay, so there you go. I hope this was helpful and it gives you a bit of an idea of the kinds of things I'm looking for.